value what you say, so we hope that you will go ahead and fill that out for us before you leave. We're going to talk for a few minutes about some, just some general specific things about the college admissions process, and then we're going to turn it over to our speakers, who have a wonderful panel for you tonight. From my left to right, we have Corey Ford from UMass Boston. Let's give him a round of applause. Okay. Kitty Bitter from Harvard College. Kelly Bellavance from Boston College. And Paula Funtz from Massasoit. And we really appreciate them being here. Most of them traveled quite a while to get here and had a lot more snow than we did, so we really appreciate their time and their effort to get here. So without further ado, why don't we get going a little bit here? So one of the things that we encourage you to do is to follow us. If you have Twitter, we send out a lot of information. We try to send it out via email, and we also send it out via Twitter. What we find is that most of the kids don't read email anymore. So if you want to keep up with what's happening with us, make sure that you check your school email or that you follow us on Twitter. Mrs. Seelig actually does our Twitter page, and she's always sending things up about scholarships and deadlines and things that are coming up for lots of things, but especially the college planning process. So again, please follow us so that you can stay informed about all the things that we want to make sure that you know about. And one of the things we want to let you know is that every student needs a plan for life after high school. And at Whitman-Hanson, this is one of the kind of tenets of our comprehensive school counseling curriculum, is to try to help your kids make that plan throughout the 4 years of school while they're here. And for us, I think some communities, they think, oh, the only option for my child is a four-year college. At Whitman-Hanson, we don't really think that. We want your child to make the best plan for them. So while most of our kids do go to four-year colleges, that's usually about 64%. Another 26% will go to two-year schools, and then a number will go to post-secondary training, specialized programs like plumbing, electrician, cosmetology, some of those skilled trades, which can be very, very good positions with very high wages. And also, we also have every year maybe 5 to 10 students that will choose the military as well. And we don't say that one of those plans is better than the other. We want to help the child with the plan that's going to be right for them. And this is one of the steps that we do for that, but we're happy to meet with you. We'll be meeting with your kids individually. We'll be meeting with them in classes next week, but we're also happy to do individual college planning appointments with you as well. So, and one of the things that we know is that if your child wants to go to college, there is a college for everybody. I spent 15 years in college admissions before becoming a school counselor, traveled around a lot, got to know a lot of people, got to see a lot of colleges, and I can guarantee you, if your child wants to go, there is one for them. Certainly, the better they do, the more options they may have, but there is definitely a route to college for everyone, should they choose that. And how do you get help with college planning? Well, you come to us. This is our school counseling staff. And again, I'm Ruth Kerrigan. I have the A and B part of the alphabet for last names. We have Mrs. Garrett in the back. Okay. Mrs. Garrett is right there. She has C through F. Next is Mrs. Seelig, Courtney Seelig in the back as well. This is Courtney. She has F through G through L. And then we have Mrs. Cunha is a new counselor that's covering for Mrs. Bianco's maternity. Those of you who have last names M through P, you probably got used to Mrs. Bianco, but she is due with her third baby any day. Is on maternity leave, and Mrs. Cunha will be with us, and she is right over here. She started on Tuesday, and so 2 days in, things are going well, right? But she's a wonderful asset to our department, and we'll work with you as well. We expect her to be here for 1.5 years. So, and we also have at the end of the alphabet, Mr. Amato. He has P through Z. And Mrs. Getchell, probably a lot of you know Kathy. She's our administrative assistant, and she is just wonderful. So if your child needs something, if you need something, and you can't reach the counselor right away, definitely talk to Kathy, and she will help you out. So in terms of making a plan, definitely work with your counselors. Check out our website. We have a couple things coming up, and this is new. We're actually having a junior parent coffee and conversation on February 1st. So if you're able to come in for an hour or so in the morning before work, this is going to be a very informal session. We're going to be meeting at a Courtyard Cafe, and really just going over kind of the timeline and things that you should be doing right now. So if you're able to come, you're welcome. I'll be sending out a link to junior parents for that in probably this week. And if you're not able to make it, get in touch with your child's counselor, and we'll be happy to work with you individually. We also are having Naviance night on March 21st. Who knows what Naviance is? Anybody? Okay. Naviance is a wonderful tool. I'm not going to spend time to go into it now, but it is a wonderful tool. We actually, it's almost like an electronic portfolio for your kids. We have them start using it in 9th grade. They do interest inventories, multiple intelligence inventories, and we load all of their PSAT scores in there and their SAT scores. We load their GPAs in there. And we're actually able to do college searches. And we're able to look at scattergrams, which plot your child against other kids from Whitman-Hanson who have applied to schools. And although you can't see any personal data, you can see the data points of students that have gotten into schools, students that haven't gotten in, and where your child fits. So it's a great tool. The kids, again, have been using it since 9th grade, but we will have a program on March 21st. We'll bring you into computer labs and teach you how to use it as well. So we'll be sending out an invitation on that as well. But wonderful tool, and we hope that you'll come for that. Some of the things coming up, I just want to make sure that you know about SATs. If your child is a junior, they should be taking their SATs. They got their PSAT reports back online right before Christmas. We're going to be giving them back their books and their English classes in a few weeks. But it's time to start thinking about testing for real with the SATs. And the next test dates are March 10th, May 5th, and June 2nd. And Whitman-Hanson is a test center for the May 5th exam. Okay? You can check with your counselor about what dates might be best. The deadline to register for March 10th is February 9th, and May 5th is April 6th. And you register on collegeboard.org. This is really the first thing that you do outside of Whitman-Hanson. For PSATs in grades 10 and 11, we offer the test. We did it all here. We paid for it all. About $7,000 to test the students, to give them a chance to practice and to see what that test experience was all about. Some of the very competitive schools will require subject tests, which are 1 hour in length and required by the most competitive colleges. So Harvard, BC, looking for SAT subject tests. And your counselor can talk to you about that. I'm sorry, what did I say?
We changed our policy a few years ago.
Okay,
We don't
sorry.
require that anymore. Sorry.
I used to, right? Okay, and there is another option. This started last year that the test will be offered in August as well. And my advice is that if you want to take the test in August, is that, or if your child wants to, is that you'll be able to register, I believe, in April. And my advice is to register early because there are not a lot of test centers for the August test. Lots of interest from kids testing, but it's difficult to run testing in the summer when schools are on vacation. Okay, so if you are interested in that August test date, check the website for College Board in April and make sure you get that registration form in early. And another test is the ACT, and again, just kind of a different kind of a test. Typically, we have hundreds of students that take the SAT, and usually about 50 or so that will take the ACT. So we usually recommend that you start with SAT, see how you do. If there are any issues or you're not scoring as well as you hope, we might talk about doing the ACT as well. And this is something that, again, we don't offer the test here, but there are lots of schools in the area that do. And the next tests coming up are April 14th and June 9th. And all of this information in terms of the testing requirements will be in that college planning booklet that you have as well. And again, any questions, make sure that you check with your school counselors. And we will be visiting junior English classes next Tuesday and Wednesday. And we're going to be doing a similar presentation with them with a lot more information. We're also going to be bringing some of our seniors in to talk with them as well about their experience through this process so they can get some advice as well. In terms of getting started, time to start thinking about that. How many in here are sophomores or sophomore parents? Really good. Starting early, awesome. Juniors? Okay. If your kids haven't started to look at schools and go visit, it's really time to get going with that. And we would encourage you to maybe use February school vacation or April school vacation to start that process. And as you get started, some of the things to think about are definitely location, size, majors, different types that we have, trade, technical, and two-year. You can use Naviance. You can come on March 21st and look about Naviance and how to do a college search, where you can make an appointment with your child's school counselor at that time to do that. And we really want to think about where is it that your child's going to want to be. We look at some of the different options. Some of them very close to us, like BU. Do you think your child could be a student in the city? And BU doesn't really have a campus, kind of the city is the campus, up and down Commonwealth Avenue. Or maybe Plymouth State in New Hampshire. My niece is a senior there and has loved every minute of it. She's close to skiing and close to the White Mountains. Or, do your kids want to go far away? What I often find is that they want to go far away until they realize that, A, they're probably not going to come home very often, that it's a plane ticket home as opposed to just having someone pick them up or a car drive. But start to think about that. Start talking about location, about what might be good for your child. And Whitman-Hanson kids apply to schools all over the world, well, all over the U.S. for sure. I would say that most of our kids go up and down the East Coast, all the way from Maine to Florida. We do have some kids that look on the West Coast, and we do have some students that go internationally as well. And we don't like to kind of clip their wings. We want them to take advantage of all different types of options for them. But again, lots and lots of choices for kids. And you also want to think about the size of the school. But UMass Amherst is bigger than the populations of Whitman-Hanson combined. It's really its own city. And some kids would do incredibly well in that type of environment. Others it would be way too much. But maybe your child wants to play Division I sports and have those big teams and having all those opportunities at a very big school. Or maybe they'd be better off at a really small school. A couple years ago, the counselors and I went to visit Newberry College. Had 962 students, very small, lots of personal attention. And that would be a great spot for some kids. Again, it's all knowing your child and knowing what's best. And the only way that you really find out about that is to visit schools. You do your research, you use Naviance, you do some college searches, and then it's really visiting the schools where you can find out what they have to offer and if it's a good fit. So when you do visit some schools, hopefully you will do that during February and April vacation. And any other choices? Any guesses? Someone's at Stonehill. Yeah, that's Stonehill. That's the old Ames estate on the top of the hill at Stonehill. So go and look at dorms and classes, look at the dining hall, tour the campus. Make sure that you register with admissions, not just drive around the campus. Because some schools, not all, but some actually track your interest and use that as part of the admissions process. So they call it demonstrated interest. They see how many times you go and visit, do you go to their open house programs, and that can be part of the admissions process. Certainly doesn't work that way at our schools, but there are a number of them that do track your interest, so that's important. Spring or fall are best when classes are in session, but if you can't do it then, summer is okay. It's just what you'll see on a lot of campuses are summer camps and things like that. You'll actually get to see the classes that go on. And again, we encourage you to look at February school vacation as an opportunity to visit schools. If you're going away and there's a college nearby, go take a look. All right. A couple other things before we get started. The juniors, we will be going on a field trip to the Boston National College Fair. It is on Friday, April 13th, which is the day before February vacation, excuse me, April vacation. And we will be getting permission forms out to the kids next week when we meet with them on Tuesday and Wednesday. We can bring 160 kids. We never really have to turn anybody away. And we do have transportation fee because we've got to book buses. So we go to the fair in the morning, we stop at the South Shore Plaza on the way home for a lunch stop, and then we're back at school before the end of the day. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of schools there from all over the country and all over the world. And for every student that goes to that field trip, we actually meet with them beforehand and do an individual college planning meeting and actually have them all set with a list of schools to visit when they go to the college fair. Another thing I just wanted to show you is, I'm not going to go into it now, but the college scorecard. This is something that's from the federal government, and it's a great website for you to go to look at what actually happens to the students that go to the different colleges. What's the graduation rate? What's the retention rate? What level of student debt do they have? This is in your packet, so I would, if you have a chance to go onto this website and maybe take a look as you're starting to plan with the schools. have Paula speak first, and she's going to be talking about opportunities at two-year schools. And there are some great opportunities. Massasoit is a wonderful school located right down the road from us. We're so lucky that they're so close, and it can be a great place for audience. So,
welcome everyone. Good evening. Good evening. All right. Thank you guys for coming and welcoming us here tonight. It's great to be here. I love talking to students about going to college. But as Ruth said, there's college for everyone. So I want to emphasize that and mention that not for the students in the audience, but also for the parents in the audience. If you're thinking of going back to school, that's always a great start. So in my presentation, you'll see why. So I'm going to get started and talk about what we have at Massasoit. Again, my name is Paula Font. I'm the Senior Admissions Counselor at Massasoit. I'm not tech savvy, so I'm not sure if I'm going to mess this up. But, so we have 3 locations in Massasoit. We have one in Brockton, and that's our main campus. Then we have a Canton campus, which is one big building, where a lot of our technical programs are offered. Is that supposed to happen? Then we have a Middleborough Center, which is a smaller site. It's actually used to be an old elementary school, but it's it's housed for the paramedic. It's a very state-of-the-art paramedic program there. Not a lot of programs there, but you'll see in my next slide. So, Middleborough site. All right, so at Massasoit we offer associate degrees and certificates. We also offer non-credit programs that are not credit-bearing. So tons and tons of certificates in non-credit side as well as credit side. But today I'm just going to focus on some of the associate degrees, not all of them, but the highlight of some of them. And again, we have 3 different locations, so some programs are only offered in certain locations. So make sure if you're interested, you know where the program is offered, in case you want to go to Canton, but it's not offered in Canton. So I'm just going to throw up here some of our programs. And when you see for example, business, we have 4 different concentrations, so it's just not business. Again, it would be too much to put on the slide, but I am going to pass out some brochures if you want to grab them on your way out. There's some more details about what programs we offer, but I just want to put out there. We also have some transfer programs, so that's not on there, it's just very specific programs that relate to a lot of the different things. And you can see the different programs at different campuses, and some of them are at the same, at all 3 campuses. For example, the business, criminal justice, you'll see that you can take it at any campus. A lot of the times you can take your general education foundation classes at all 3 locations, but when it comes to your major programs, major courses, you might have to only take it at the location it's offered. So some students do that because they're closer to Brockton. They might go to Brockton, take their courses, take more courses, try to figure out what they really want to do first, and then when they decide, they can go on to their major classes. I just wanted to throw up there that Massasoit is very hands-on. So right in the beginning of your semester, you'll already get a hands-on feeling of what you want to do to see if it's the right program for you, it's the right fit, where a lot of the schools, you might not be doing that until your junior year. So in your first year, you can get right into your program and start doing the hands-on technical work, where you can get the feeling of, is this what I want to do, or do I need to change my major? So I just wanted to highlight some of the hands-on programs that we offer at Massasoit. We also offer online programs. This is very short from what we have. I have another list of programs that we offer online, but what I highlighted up here is what programs we do offer 100% online. So some students are thinking of going to Massasoit, but they can't go full-time and go to work full-time and go to school full-time, so they want the online option. So I wanted to throw that up there just in case some students want to take online classes. Also, if the program that is not up there and you want to take some classes online, you still can. There's a lot, again, core courses that you can take online, but a lot of the sciences, or if you're a program in nursing, those classes you won't be able to take online. But I just wanted to highlight that. And then other ways to save money. So Massasoit is very affordable. A lot of students come because they either don't know what they want to do, or they know what they want to do, but they want it at a cheaper price. So there's different ways to save money. So I wanted to highlight up here that we have the mass transfer program. So a lot of the times students come in and say, I want to do business, but I want to transfer to a four-year school later. Again, we have 4 concentrations. We have the marketing, accounting, supervisory management, and hospitality. And then we also have the transfer option. So a lot of the times, if I know they want to transfer, I mention, why don't you do the business administration transfer option, so that way you can already get into your transfer program. So if you did transfer and you graduate, you actually leave before you graduate, you'll save 11% on your bachelor's degree with a 2.0. If you finish 60 credits in transfer, you would save 28% on your bachelor's degree. This is not including room and board, so I just want to put that out there. With the transfer of a 2.0, you get guaranteed transfer of credits, no application fee at your four-year school, no application essay, and also if you have a 2.5, you get all of the above, guaranteed university admission, and also a 3.0 will give you 100% tuition credit. So anytime I mention that, people go, oh, what does that mean, 100% tuition waiver? So tuition is a smaller amount of what you pay for school. The fees is what really get you, but the tuition, 100% tuition waiver, is like a scholarship, so you don't have to pay back. So you're saving 100% on tuition when you go into your four-year school with a 3.0. And if you do the Commonwealth commitment, that's something that's new. A lot of students don't take advantage of this because you have to be committed to it. But if you already know, you're a student that already knows you want to go to UMass Dartmouth, UMass Boston. In your first semester, you're picking your classes, but you really want to let your advisor know before you reach 15 credits, because then you are committed to the program, which means that you are going to be full-time. You have to maintain a 3.0 GPA, and you go for the 2 years at Massasoit. Once you graduate, you'll go to your four-year school, and you'll get a 10% rebate for every successful semester. You also get tuition freeze on your tuition and fees. So if you decide this year, I want to do this, in 2 years when you graduate, your tuition and fees will freeze, so you'll pay whatever it was 2 years ago at the school of your choice, even if the prices went up. So that's another way of saving, and you can save up to 40% on your bachelor's degree, again with all the GPA requirements and making sure that you're committed to it, staying full-time. Even when you go to your four-year school, you have to remain full-time, and you have to remain with that 3.0. So again, a lot of students don't take advantage of that because they don't know, they're not sure where they want to go. But for those students that know exactly where they want to go, Commonwealth commitment will be a great way to save up to 40%. So just quick fees, tuition and fees at Massasoit. So $24 per credit for the fees, and it's $171 if you add the $163 and the $8, $171 for the fees, coming out to $195 per credit. So if you're taking an English comp class, that will be $585 as the 3-credit course. So just giving you an idea. And if you're out of state or international students, will pay a little bit more, or a lot more if you look at it, $230 versus $24 per credit. So totaling $401 per credit if you're taking a 1-credit course. Okay. At Massasoit, we do have some sports that students can join. So we have men's sports, we have basketball, baseball, cross-country, golf, soccer, and track and field. Same for the girls, we have basketball, cross-country, soccer, softball, and track and field. So the only difference is the golf that we don't have for the girls. But I just wanted to highlight some sports if anyone's interested. All right, how do we get started? So submit your application. It's a free application from Massasoit, 4 pages long, really 3 pages. The third page is you picking your major. So you want to pick one major that you want to do. Sometimes students go into business accounting, but they want the certificate as well in computerized accounting. You can do that after and meet with an advisor. So if you don't double major, but if you want to do some certificates concurrent with your degree program, you can do that in certain programs. And then you complete the FAFSA application. So if anyone's a senior here and they're thinking of going into the fall, you want to do your FAFSA application now for 2018, 2019. And then you complete the placement test. It's called the Active Placer in reading, writing, and math. So we want to make sure you place into the right level. If you need college prep classes first, then you take those, or if you go right into college level courses. Again, the test is free, and you can take it twice in a semester. So if you take the first time and you want to improve your score, there's some study guides online. You can go back and take it twice in a semester and try to improve your score before you go into any college level course. then you sign up for orientation. At orientation, you'll learn everything you need to know about becoming a student at Massasoit. You'll get your ID, your parking pass. We are a commuter school. We don't have dorms, so you'll have a parking pass so you can park in the student parking lot for free. And you'll also register for classes during that time at orientation. So at Massasoit, we always point out that success starts here. So I wanted to show, just briefly share with you a story about a student at Massasoit, how you can get started at Massasoit and go anywhere you want to go after that, completing at Massasoit. All right, so I wasn't sure what the setup was going to be like, so I thought it was going to be closer and a smaller classroom. So I just brought this over. I think everyone could see it, maybe people in the back. So I just want to read, and then while I'm talking about these two gentlemen, their brothers, Guillermo and Ruben Ortiz. They share more than just a last name. Both brothers discovered their life passions at Massasoit Community College, and both graduated with near-perfect GPAs. Guillermo, graduate of 2013, is a gifted mathematician who discovered his passion for math in his first class at Massasoit. After graduating Massasoit, he went on to Bridgewater State University. Guillermo graduated from Bridgewater State University with his bachelor's degree in mathematics with concentrations in pure mathematics and statistics. There, he conducted research on modeling the spread of the measles virus in small, closed populations and presented his research at national conferences. Guillermo began a doctorate program at Purdue University in the fall of 2016 with the ultimate goal of becoming a professor. His brother, Ruben, is passionate about social justice and equality. After excelling in the criminal justice program at Massasoit, he earned his bachelor's and master's degree in criminal justice from Bridgewater State University and pursued his doctorate in sociology with a concentration in criminology at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville in the fall of 2016. Their older brother, Juan, so it's a family up here, they all attended Massasoit, studied at Massasoit for a few semesters while teaching Spanish through the Gateway College program. After transferring, Juan went on to earn 2 master's degrees, one in global development and social justice from St. John's University in New York, and a second from a university in Barcelona. Although they were both Massasoit students at the same time, Guillermo says we did not have the luxury of time to study together. While maintaining a dean's list, he worked full-time at various jobs, at times logging 50 hours a week. Guillermo added that he and Ruben have also been pretty close. Juan was a great inspiration to them. Guillermo turned down an acceptance at a university in New York after high school because of the financial burden, he said. Massasoit offered a convenient way for me to continue my education as it was nearby, inexpensive, and offered quality education. When he started at Massasoit, he didn't have a particular interest in math, but apparently he had a natural gift. He says, I remember taking a math placement test and being nervous that I'd messed it up because I was told to talk to an advisor after I was done. It turned out that my score had placed me into calculus. Guillermo recalled. It was that course that really started things for me. He said, at that time, I was not particularly interested in pursuing mathematics, but my professor saw it potential in me and recommended me to become a tutor. So again, a lot of times students go into Massasoit not knowing exactly what they want to do, and they find an itch. Maybe a professor will see it in them and tell them, maybe you should do this. He actually went on, got his bachelor's and his master's, and then his doctorate. So again, you can start right at Massasoit and go anywhere from there. And as I mentioned earlier, Ruth mentioned this college for everyone. Again, at Massasoit, the traditional faces is not just the students that are coming out of high school. We have a lot of students that are older students. We have a mixture of different populations, different students coming from different countries, international students. So it's really a place for anyone. Yeah, that's it.
Hi folks, how you doing? Good. I'm Corey Ford. I'm with the University of Massachusetts, Boston. I'm here this evening to talk, I'll talk a little bit about UMass Boston, but I'm really here to speak a little bit about the policies, procedures, admission standards, and just opportunities in general with the UMasses and state universities here in Massachusetts. So this is a picture of our campus, and UMass Boston is an interesting place right now in the university's history. This aerial was probably taken before I got there, so I would say maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And in that span of time, nice areas like this are a little harder to come by. Reason being is we've been undergoing a tremendous amount of investment and construction to the campus in the last number of years. So since this picture was last taken, we introduced a $165 million integrated sciences complex for biology, chemistry, biochemistry, a number of our STEM programs, School for the Environment. Where the parking lot to the right of the campus center is now University Hall, which we opened in 2016. It's a general academic building with more than 2,000 classroom seats, but it's also the home to our arts and performing arts department. So we have a black box theater, we have a recital hall, we have a number of soundproof music spaces where students can record themselves and practice. We've got a dance studio up on the 4th floor that overlooks the Boston Harbor and downtown Boston, so some really tremendous spaces within University Hall. We've added a new baseball field in conjunction with Boston College High, which is called Monin Park, which is actually the exact same specs and size as Fenway Park. And most recently, we are in the midst of building our first ever residence hall. So UMass Boston historically and up to this point has never had its own dormitory or residence hall on campus. Our students have always either commuted. We're fortunate enough to be right on the T. So we have our own stop on the Red Line, which is the JFK UMass stop. So a lot of ease back and forth for our students. We've got a shuttle bus system on campus that gets them back and forth. But a lot of the students that were either coming from a little bit of a distance or out of state or internationally, many of them would live in 2 apartment complexes that are immediately adjacent to our campus. You can actually see both of them in the picture, one of which is Harbor Point, the other of which is Peninsula. And we have thousands of our undergraduate students that live there. But right now we've got 2, which I added a picture. We have 2 brand new buildings making up one residence hall complex or community. There'll be just over 1,000 beds, about 1,050 beds. And students that are high school seniors are applying right now to be the first ever to live there. So we're truly excited about the opportunity that it represents for our students, for students from the state of Massachusetts, those that live nearby that are looking for a quality public education, want to study in Boston, a tremendous city. And as you can tell, it's a beautiful location. We've got about 13,000 undergraduate students studying at UMass Boston, about 16,500 in total, inclusive of our master's and PhD students. We're a nationally recognized research university. And yeah, that's a little bit about us. A number of different academic programs, about 80 plus academic programs spanning our College of Science and Mathematics, College of Liberal Arts, College of Education and Human Development, School for the Environment, College of Nursing and Health Sciences, and an accredited College of Management. So that's all I'll say right now specifically about UMass Boston, but I'd like to get into a little bit about the state school system, and again, the opportunities that it provides for individuals from the state of Massachusetts. There we go. Okay. Nope, that brought me to the very end. And again, okay. I still don't think that's what I want. Paul, how did you do this? There we go. All right. So this is the one thing I really want to highlight this evening is there's some tremendous information available to students and families looking to apply to community colleges, state universities, and the UMass system, right? We really think that transparency throughout the application process is most beneficial for those students looking to apply. So really, throughout a lot of the slides that I kind of cut and pasted in my presentation this evening are from the Massachusetts Board of Higher Education website. It's a tremendous website, it's very accessible, it's updated frequently. My staff can practically quote from it. I would imagine that the school counselor staff and the guidance staff here at Whitman-Hanson are probably incredibly familiar with the page. It's a lot of the kind of admission policies and procedures set out by the Massachusetts Board of Higher Education that all of the state universities, UMasses, and community colleges kind of abide by. This is just a map of all of the community colleges, state universities, and UMasses here in the state of Massachusetts. And I think that we're all really fortunate to be here and to have such tremendous options, right? So we have, I think it's 15 community colleges. Those are the circles, the light circles. We have 9 state universities. Those are the gray boxes. And we have 5 UMasses, UMass Amherst, UMass Dartmouth, UMass Lowell, UMass Boston, and UMass Medical. So again, a lot of options for our students, and not just cost effective, and we'll talk about cost effectiveness in just a moment, but really quality options, right? A value in education. So it's not just potentially paying less, but also really getting a great education at the same time. Oh my God. Unbelievable. This thing is just doing... Okay, I think this is the slide I want. All right. So this was, I just pulled this off of a website. The tuition and fees are accurate, but not to this year. They're about a year set back. UMass Boston, which is at the bottom, our tuition and fees this year for in-state is $13,828. I checked a couple of these other websites, and they're all pretty accurate. And so again, this just kind of gives you a sense of some of the tuition and fees at public institutions. So I pulled some UMasses, UMass Boston. I pulled some state universities, Bridgewater State, and I pulled a community college, Bunker Hill Community College, from which we at UMass Boston see a number of students. And you can see tuition fees, in-state tuition and fees there, as compared to some of the private options. Now, there's a couple things that I do want to say. Those being that this does not include room and board, first and foremost, right? And secondarily, when you're applying to school, when you're ultimately paying for school, most students are not paying the sticker price of what actual tuition and fees and potential room and board are, right? There's a lot of tremendous public universities here in this state, and many of them have tremendous endowments, and they are able to subsidize students. There's a lot of need funding and whatnot. But there's many students who may not qualify for that. So I think it is really important to just take a look and see what the cost of tuition and fees at some of these great in-state institutions are, especially if you're a student who thinks that you might be going on for higher levels of education, if you're going on for a master's degree, or if you're going on potentially for a PhD, as we just heard Paula talking a little bit about, to be able to come out of an undergraduate institution, a quality undergraduate institution, owing less or ideally nothing, to then be able to go on to another college or university for a master's or PhD program is certainly something to keep in mind. And we see at UMass Boston, upwards of about a third of our students are leaving UMass owing no debt, and the average debt of a student leaving UMass Boston is far less than the national average. Okay, I think that was right. Okay, so this is taken directly from the Massachusetts Board of Higher Education page. There's an admission standards document that I would really recommend you all read, especially if you're thinking about applying to a state university or UMass. The community colleges within the state are open enrollment, and so students need to be able to show proof of high school graduation or a GED, but the other state universities and UMasses are not open enrollment. Students need to apply, and they are at varying levels of competitiveness. But this is a great tool. I'm sure that the school counselors and the guidance counselors at the high school are encouraging this. They can enforce this. But these are the academic units that we at the state universities and the University of Massachusetts are looking for our applicants to have. So we are doing GPA recalculations based on 17 academic units, right? And you can see here, nope. Never mind, I was trying to do laser, but that's too much for me. So we can see here in the far right, fall 17 and beyond, some of the standards have changed a little bit in recent years, but we're looking for 4 years of English. We're looking for 4 years of math, including a math in the senior year. So if you double up on a math in a sophomore year or junior year, we're also looking for a math in the senior year. As of fall 2017, we're looking for 3 lab science courses. We're looking for 2 social science courses, one of which has to be U.S. history. We're looking for 2 foreign languages. of the same language, so we're not looking for a German one and an Italian one, but some progression in the same language. And then we're pulling 2 electives. Arts and humanities, computer sciences, but it's also at the discretion, let's say, of the admissions representative. If you're applying for a specific program, maybe in the arts, well then maybe we can take that painting class that you took or that interactive multimedia class, whereas if you were applying for, a management major, maybe you wouldn't take that class, but a little bit of discretion there with the electives. But these are the academic units that we're looking for in our applicants. And so it would certainly behoove students to be looking to meet these criteria if they're looking to apply onto a state university or UMass. So even though if you say, if math is really not my thing, well, maybe let's make it your thing for 1 more year, right? And there's a little bit of, again, on the student's part, there's a little bit of discretion as to what you're taking. Nobody says you have to take calculus in your senior year. It might be statistics, right? It might be something else. So the Massachusetts Board of Higher Education page sets general academic standards, and I kind of consider them like federal guidelines in that they're minimums, and then the states can kind of impose higher strictures. And so, in general, the Massachusetts Board of Higher Education says that state universities and UMasses are looking for students with upwards of a 3.0 or B recalculated GPA, and also those submitting an SAT or an ACT. An SAT and ACT of anything. So you could have gotten a 200 on your SAT, and so long as you have a 3.0, that meets kind of for the state minimum academic requirements. Obviously, most of the state universities and UMasses are setting a higher bar, but generally it's the 3.0 is what we're looking for, right? In the case that a student is not necessarily earning a 3.0, there is what we call a sliding scale. So there's a particular sliding scale for the UMass systems, the 5 schools, and there's a sliding scale for the state universities. So if a student has a little bit below, let's say, a 3.0 recalculated for the UMass, well, we'd be looking for that student to kind of have elevated standardized test scores to kind of indicate to us, okay, well, maybe not here, but yes, there. So we see here, let's say, a student would be looking for a 1030 based on the new SATs or a 20 on the ACT. Now, again, this does not guarantee admission, but it's just kind of giving our families and our students a general baseline as to where you would want to be to make yourself relatively competitive in applying to some of these institutions, or in that case, the UMasses. Down to the right, we see that the sliding scale is a little bit different for state universities. Okay, so again, just something that's a little helpful. That document online is really not that many pages, but there's some great information in there. There's also some other really good information on the Massachusetts Board of Higher Education website. There's a lot of different students, right? I mean, we just said that there's a college for everyone. And there's a college for everyone because there's so many different types of students with so many different types of stories out there. And so again, we're trying to increase understanding and kind of increase transparency when applying to state schools. And so they give some great information about transfer applicants. What is a qualified transfer applicant? If you're looking to go to a community college and come through the mass transfer program or the Commonwealth Commitment Program, what can you expect when applying to a state university or UMass? What types of grades should you be earning? We talk a little bit about non-traditional applicants, of which UMass Boston has many, being one of the only public universities in the city of Boston, us and Mass Art. We get a lot of non-traditional applicants, students that have finished school years ago, parents that never started or are looking to come back, so it gives information about that. It gives information about students for whom English may not be their primary language, and what we're looking for language proficiency. It talks about applicants with learning disability. The state allows for students who have learning disabilities and feel as though they'd like to disclose that, maybe submit some documentation. It allows us to review their application without needing to submit standardized test scores or something. So you can always engage in those conversations with the staff here or with the admissions staff at the institutions to which you're applying. And it gives you information about homeschooled applicants and what their application process looks like. And I think there's some really nice tools on that website for GPA recalculation, right? Again, increased transparency. So we talked a little bit about those 17 academic units that we'll be looking for and we'll be using for that GPA recalculation. But when I talk about some of those minimum standards, the 3.0 recalculated GPA, or what your GPA might need to be to qualify for that sliding scale, you might think, well, how exactly do I get that? So we are recalculating each and every student's GPA who applies to UMass Boston. So certainly what might be on your high school transcript is a good starting point, but those two numbers can differ, And so if on your high school transcript it's a 3.1, but we come out to a 2.9, well then we might be looking to see if you qualify on the sliding scale. So there's some great, this is a little grid that you can kind of plug some of your own numbers into. There is even, I found, which I didn't even know when I was poking around the website the other day, something a little bit more automated where you can just type in the number of units for the class, the grade letter, and things like that. It just kind of spits something out for you. So you can kind of, fool around with it and see if it works for your purposes.
At Whitman-Hanson, the scale that we use for your GPA is the Board of Higher Education scale, and our requirements for graduation are actually higher than all of the things, the courses that you saw on the list, so we should be good.
Okay, I'm not going to be fancy and use PowerPoint, but I'm kind of glad, given some of the issues that we've had, I decided to do that. So I'm just going to be talking to you. My name is Kelly Valentine. I am from Boston College, and I have been asked to speak to you about the college essay. And I think that probably of all the components of the application that you will be putting together in your senior year of high school, the essay is probably the part that causes perhaps the most anxiety and the most stress. And hopefully some of the things that I can share with you after years and years of reading applications can help decrease that stress a little bit for you as you go through this process. And when you think about it, there's probably multiple reasons why this is stressful. You don't get a whole lot of guidance on the topic of the essay, on what it should be. You get a couple prompts if you're using the common application, which you will get more familiar with as you go through this process. There are 5 or 6 different prompts. They tend to be pretty vague and broad so that it allows you to write about a lot of different things. You will hear from college admission officers like myself who say we want to learn about you, and we say really vague things like that. And when you sit down to write this, you sometimes just don't know where to start. So there's a lot of validity in your anxiety if you end up having that around this college essay. And I think sometimes that's good to know because as you go through this process, there's going to be different things perhaps that will cause you stress. And it's just nice to know that this is one of the things that does cause everybody stress. So when you're stressed, if you're stressed, you write in with your peers regardless of what they're telling you when you're all hanging out together. I think one of the good things to start with is why are we asking for a college essay and what are we looking to get from that? I'm a big fan of asking the question why for anything. I'm sure it's something that annoys the heck out of my boss, but I always do better when I understand what's going on and why is this being asked of me or what are we trying to achieve. And for schools that do require a college essay as part of their application process, we're really trying to glean 2 things from this. One is to get a demonstration of your writing ability. Your writing ability will be crucial for your success in any college and university you enroll in. And so first and foremost, your essay is a demonstration of that. Secondly, it is a really nice way for us to get a little bit of a sense of who you are. There's lots of components in your application, and I always say that, this is first and foremost an academic competition, so when you're applying to colleges, your academic record will always carry the most weight. But your academic record, quite frankly, is probably one of the most boring things about you. It's a list of courses you've taken, it's grades you've gotten, it's test scores. Those things are noteworthy and they tell us about your accomplishments, but they're not interesting. They're not personable. Your essay is personable. It's the place where you have control over what you want to tell us. So when you're thinking about that and you're trying to think of a topic, these are some things that you can consider. First and foremost, tell us about you. All college admission offices are going to say this. What does that mean? It means that when you get done writing the essay and when we get done reading it, we should have learned things about you. Sometimes students want to write a nice piece of writing about their parents or about their grandparents and how influential they've been in their life. And that's a really nice gesture, but at the end of that essay, if I learn more about your grandparents than I have about you as an applicant, that is a misfire. A really nice thing, a really nice testament to your grandparents, but in this process, I'm looking to admit you to my university, not your grandparents. And sometimes at the end of those essays, I kind of want to meet your grandparents and admit them, and that's not really the way that this is supposed to go. You want to tell us only a story that you can tell us. Well, what does that mean? I'll use the example of being on a sports team. Many students are on a sports team in high school. I was on a sports team when I was in high school. And those experiences, those relationships with your teammates, the lessons that you learn from coaches, the lessons that you learn from defeat, they can be so defining in a young person's life. But I will tell you that so many people write about being part of a sports team. Because while it may feel like that's the only story you can tell us, you can relate to the fact that many other high school students are on a sports team and could probably tell a very similar story. So you want to dig a little bit deeper. Tell us something that's specific to your life, to your journey, that's impacted you. I do have an example of a really great essay that I read this past fall that I will share with you at the end to help illustrate some of the things that I'm saying. I think one of the things to remember is that the focus of this essay is on you. And that's a different kind of writing than perhaps you're used to doing for your assignments in high school. And I think sometimes it's really easy to get tripped up on that for students. Because again, this is something different. It is personable. It is personal to you. And I think sometimes when you're 17, 18 years old, it is really hard to be able to put down onto paper something that's really true and honest about yourself, especially when you know that strangers are going to be reading it and you don't even know who we are. So I get that this type of writing is hard and difficult, and when it feels different than what you're used to doing for your assignments, trust in the fact that that is how it should feel, because this is a little bit different. You want to make sure that you're writing to us in your authentic voice. When students will use a thesaurus to come up with really big words to make themselves sound intelligent, but they're words that you would never use in normal conversation, that doesn't come across well. It's not authentic. And I have struggled over the years to try to explain to students and families how an authentic voice comes through in an essay. And unfortunately for you here tonight, I will tell you I still have not found a way to describe that. But trust me when I tell you that when students write to us in an authentic voice, there is a takeaway from that where I feel like I got to know them a little bit as a person. I got to understand their story. I got to understand what they're telling us about this one little piece, this one little story about their life. So write to us in that voice. At the same time, I'm going to temper that and say, make sure that you're writing to us in a slightly different voice than you would text to your friends. Remember that this is something where you are applying for something and you don't want to talk to us in the vernacular of how you would with your friends hanging out at lunch. So you probably all know what I mean by that. Is the college essay a place to use humor and creative writing? It sure can be. It may not be. I think that depends upon you as a writer and what you're comfortable doing. I would say that the college essay is probably not the place to use humor or creative writing for the first time in your writing. If it's something that you're used to doing, it's something that you're good at, then you can certainly employ those things. Is the college essay a place to take risks? There's many different risks that students take with their essays. Some risks pay off really strongly, some risks don't. The reality is that's going to be hard for you to gauge, and I think the most important thing when you're taking a risk in your essay is that you're thoughtful about it, and that it's a decision that you're making and you're not doing it by mistake. Some risks, some examples of that might be using some language. There was an essay that I read by a young girl who had a health condition and had very limited amount of things that she could eat. And some people in her high school class picked on her about that. And when one young man was talking to her about that, he used a bad word. She chose to use that word as she was quoting him in the essay. And I was at an essay writing workshop at a different school, and I said to her, this is a risk for using a word that is a bad word, and you're not sure how your audience is going to react to that. And she said that she had been thoughtful about it, and she thought that to quote him exactly really helped tell exactly what he was saying and how it made her feel. I tended to agree with her about that, but I felt that it needed to be a thoughtful risk she was taking. I've read all kinds of different essays over the years that have very serious content in them. There's a young man who wrote about the death of his mother from a drug overdose and how, even though he knew it wasn't his failure, that's how it felt. And it was a very honest essay. I think sometimes with something that serious, you run the risk of sounding a little bit like a victim, but this young man didn't do that. He was able to write about this, and again, relating it back to him and how he felt in that moment. So it was sad, it was serious, but it was honest and it was reflective. They don't have to be those things, but again, that's a little risk. That's a risk that he took. And so if you're thinking about writing about something that might be risky, again, seeking some extra help, making sure that the tone is coming through that you need for it to. And that gets us to have someone else read your essay when you're done with it. This is so important. And when I say have someone else read it, I don't mean your best friend or your mom or dad. They are probably a little bit too close to you. They probably know the story, or they might know the story that you're trying to tell. And you need to remember that the person reading your essay is not going to know you, is not going to know the story. So you want to make sure, is it clear what I'm trying to say? Did you learn something about me? If you used humor or creative writing or wrote about something very serious, did you strike the right tone? So you also need to find someone who's going to be honest with you about those things. Because in this situation, you don't just want someone who's going to pat you on the head and say, yes, it was great. Maybe it was great, and that's awesome feedback, but you definitely want to pick someone who's a little bit removed from you, but can give you some really honest feedback about that. Lastly, I will say that spell checking is different than proofreading. Some years ago, I had a young lady. She applied to Boston College Early Action, and she was deferred to our regular decision pool. And in her essay, I don't even really remember what she was writing about, but she was talking about something about her family dinner. And instead of writing the word dinner, she wrote the word sinner. It was just a typo. It wasn't a big deal. It's not the reason why she was deferred. But after she was deferred, she went back into her application as she was rereading her essay, and she sent me a letter in the mail. And she basically said, I was horrified to find this mistake in my essay. I wrote the word sinner instead of the word dinner. As you know, the S and the D are right beside each other on the keyboard. And I was like, I do know that. And, you know, I laugh about it, but as I read this letter, I could feel this girl's angst. And it was something that she had done unintentionally that just added to the stress of this process. So take the time to proofread your essay, because that word was spelled right, but it was the wrong word for her to be using in that context. So I know you guys are busy. I know that when you get to this fall, adding the college search process is like adding a whole nother class to what you're doing. But anything that you can do to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward with your application, especially with your essay, something that you have complete control over, will certainly help you as you go through this process. So as I said, I do have an example here. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I think it just really helps to illustrate some of the things that I was talking about. Before I read this, for the students in the room, how many of you know what I'm talking about when I say there was a car company named Saturn? Students, how many? A few. Parents? You all. Okay, yeah. All right. You'll get what I'm saying. Okay. Shortly before entering my junior year of high school, my neighbors granted me the rights to their aging dark green Saturn S car. Long before I was born, the Saturn was considered the car of the future from a new kind of car company. Sadly, by the time I was handed the keys, Saturn Incorporated had gone defunct, and if this car truly was the car of the future, then things had gone very, very wrong. As I drove to school for the first time, I felt exposed. Certainly, my sense of vulnerability stemmed from the car's refusal to come to a full stop no matter how hard I slammed on the brake, and I felt quite certain that there was enough secondhand smoke still floating in the warm brown interior to give me lung cancer. But if I am to be truly honest, my discomfort went deeper than that. I was worried about image. In the classroom and on the baseball field, I took great pride in my work. I had big dreams, and my goals were nothing short of perfection. My Saturn, with its spewing black exhaust and oh-so-peculiar smells, mocked all my dreams of invincibility. He goes on to talk about how, when he gets to school, he took a parking spot far away from all the fancier cars that some of his friends drove. And he really just kind of wanted to hide the fact that he's driving this beat-up, old, embarrassing car. But much to his dismay, his friends used to meet by this car all the time during breaks, and it became a place that they hung out during school. He talked about that this car had something no other car had, authenticity. It was covered with dents and held together with surgically placed duct tape. The Saturn was no place to talk about how great life was going to be. No. This car encouraged conversation about the reality of AP classes, demanding coaches, and university admit rates that kept getting slimmer by the year. What better place for an honest conversation than around a car that hid nothing? He goes on to conclude by saying, as it turns out, driving the car of a dysfunctional future did not harm my reputation, rather it enhanced it. I'll see you at Saturn became one of my class's favorite phrases. And the car was featured in more prom photos than I can count. My green Saturn was the ideal car to teach me an essential lesson, that the car does not make a man. But my experience leaning against the Saturn, as my classmates and I shared the highs and lows of high school, taught me an even more important lesson, that far from being a sign of weakness, authenticity liberates and inspires, even when covered in green paint. This was such a great example of something that was such a simple thing in this young man's life. He was given a car that at first he was probably excited about, later became embarrassed about, and he took that in a really honest, reflective way and turned it into something really interesting to read, fun to read, and just really memorable. So not every student is going to have this story. Very few students even here knew what a Saturn was. This essay probably played well because he knows his audience is older and knows what that car is. But this is an example, and I hope that some of the things I've said here will just help ease your anxiety a little bit, and I wish you guys the best of luck in this process.
I drove a dark green Saturn sedan. It was my father's car. It hit 88,000 miles and it completely fell apart. So I get it. Anyway, I'm Kitty Vidra. I'm here from Harvard College. Thank you all for coming. I'm supposed to be talking to you about selective colleges, the application process, and the committee process, how we make the decisions that we make, in the space of 5 minutes or less. I'll talk fast. I don't have a PowerPoint either because bad things happen when I start trying to drink water, look at my notes, and deal with technology at the same time. But anyway, selective colleges, when you hear selective admissions, it can mean a lot of different things. It means different things to everybody at this table. It can mean something as specific as having the qualifications to enroll in a certain major or a certain degree program, or it can mean much more broadly being part of a larger academic pool that's being considered for fewer spots than there are number of applicants in the pool. Excuse me, at Harvard, for instance, last year we had 40,000 applications for the 1,650 spaces in our freshman class. We'll talk about, don't get up and walk away, because that number means less than you think it means, and hopefully by the time I explain a little bit about what we're looking for and how this process works, you'll feel a little bit better about it. I think the worry is when you hear selective admissions, and especially if you read the paper and you look at articles that say things that have a headline along the lines of, what do colleges want in an applicant, everything, you get a little nervous because you start thinking that there is one definition of success. And some of my colleagues earlier tonight have talked about how that really isn't true, that your success is your success, and your success is going to be different from everyone else's in this room, and there is room for more than one definition of success as you go through this college admissions process. It breeds a number of different things. It breeds, like I said, a narrow definition. My daughters went to Newton North, so big, suburban, high-powered public school outside of Boston. My older daughter in particular, she was a free spirit, she's a writer, she's a poet, she's an artist, she was sort of out of the mainstream. And high school was tough for her because at Newton North, many of her peers and many of her classmates were set on applying to a certain caliber of colleges, and they thought there was one way to get there. And her way was not that way. And she was a much better college student than she was a high school student. She had a much better college experience because she went to a college where she felt like she could be herself, as opposed to sort of marching along this treadmill that had been defined for her by other people as to what it would take to get into a good college. It breeds a number of different things. It breeds an industry that's, as I like to say, that's based on the fear of not being good enough, and it breeds a notion that in order to get into a selective college, you have to do these certain number of things, usually most of which cost money, in the form of test prep or essay writing services or interview prep or whatever, or summer experiences that may look good to a college admissions office. And that has certainly changed since back in the day, long ago, in the prehistoric era when I started working for Harvard, when we had 10,000 applicants for the 1,650 spaces in the freshman class. And it's totally changed because people get caught up. It becomes sort of an arms race of collecting resume points as opposed to being people. And I think it's important to, in this process, step back every now and then and think not about what's going to make you the best applicant as you narrowly define it, but think about what's going to make you the best person and the best version of yourself, because that's what colleges are really looking for. We're looking at potential. We're looking at the contribution that we're going to hope that you are going to be making to society down the road, 5 years out of college, 10 years out of college, 25 years out of college, and that's going to be different for everybody again. So think about your long-term goals. Think about what you want out of the college experience, because the college experience is really what you make it. It's about much more than the bumper sticker that's on the back of the car. It's what you do with the experience that you have. I have said this to approximately 1 million Whitman-Hanson students over the course of the years that I've interviewed in my office, that I think that what this school does really well is that it encourages people to be themselves. That it really, I never see the same applicant twice out of this high school. And I think that's a testament to the job that you as students do, the job that you as parents do, the job that your teachers and your administrators do. But the one thing that all of the students that I see, or most of the students I see from this school, is that they are really enthusiastic about whatever it is that they happen to do as the one thing that drives them, or the two things that motivate them. And that's what's going to work in your favor when you talk about applying to selected colleges. Love what you do, and no matter what that is, because that's going to come through in your essay, that's going to come through in your course selection, that's going to come through all through this process. So let's talk a little bit about the application itself. We've heard a lot about sort of requirements, specific course requirements, the essay, but there are other pieces of the application too. And I think for all of us, probably the most important piece of your application is your transcript. That's your body of work over high school. Not just the courses, not just the grades you have received, but the quality, the rigor of your curriculum. We're hoping that you more than meet the state minimum standards for applying to selected schools. We're hoping that you have the option to pursue an interest of yours beyond the requirements, whether that's through a dual enrollment program or distance learning or an independent research project that you've done on your own. But your transcript is the thing that you have control over the 4 years, much more so than the tests that represent you on a Saturday morning when you may or may not have been at your best, or much more than the other pieces of your application. There are students who apply to and are admitted to Harvard every year who have really good grades and really good course choices and what they would consider relatively modest SAT or ACT scores. There are many students who apply every year to Harvard who have perfect SAT scores and who have perfect ACT scores, and who aren't admitted because their grades aren't up to snuff. Your grades are much more important. Your high school transcript is the thing you have control over. So start early, sophomores, juniors, think about your course selection for next year, because we're looking for progress over time. We're looking for students who are excited about the thought of enrolling in a college where they're not going to be the smartest kid in the room, or they're not going to be the only one, where the A's aren't going to come easily to them. Selective colleges are really hoping to find students who are learning for the sake of learning, not just for the sake of the grades. That goes back to sort of resume building that I talked about a little bit before. Tests are a piece of this, obviously. Like I just said, they're a little less important than you think they are. Your transcript is much more meaningful to us in most cases. We expect that there may have been some bumps along the road if you moved schools, if you were ill, if your parents were circumstances at home that affected your grades. Use your application to tell us that. If it doesn't fit as part of your essay, use the additional information section to tell us, because we are looking at you as a whole person. As Kelly said earlier, we're hoping to learn about you, and that if there are bumps along the road, don't let those stand in the way of telling us about them. Essays, I agree with everything that Kelly said about the importance and the use that we make of essays. I will add that there is always space for additional materials. If you are a musician and you want to send in music as part of your portfolio, or an artist and you want to send in samples of your work, or a copy of the school newspaper, or whatever it may be, if it's relevant to the admissions committee getting to know who you are now, feel free to include it. If you don't think it's relevant, even if it is your grandmother's state fair prize-winning brownie recipe that's been in the family for generations, I don't need it. Don't feel as though you need to submit the thickest application, back up the largest truck to the loading dock, as before we were all online. We used to say that unloads your application and it takes 6 students and 3 boxes to put it on my desk. Don't feel as though you need to do that. The requirements that colleges have are very straightforward, and they're really fairly simple. There are no games in this process. I think that's another point that I wanted to emphasize earlier, is that what's happened over the years is that students sometimes think is that this is a game, and it's a system that you can beat if you do certain things. And that we're asking you this, but what we're really asking you is that. And that's not really true. The Common App, the Universal App, the Coalition App, they're all very straightforward. We ask you for very simple things, and that's what we're expecting. Don't feel as though you have to go out and do more than what is asked of you. Certainly don't feel that you should do less, but that these requirements, we do make sense out of it. We'll ask you for teacher reports. 2, in most cases. We hope that those are teachers who know you well. We hope that they are teachers who have taught you fairly recently, so sophomore, junior, senior year. If it's middle school, I get a little nervous. If there are more than 2 teachers who want to write for you, if the assistant principal wants to write a letter for you, or if an employer wants to write for you, or a neighbor who has watched you grow up and who knows you in some context, those are fine as well. But 2 academic teachers is usually what the school will ask for. Your guidance counselor will submit a report along with a school profile, which is really helpful for us in the admissions office, because we will know from looking at your school profile what kinds of courses you're taking in terms of what the rigor of your program might be. We'll have information along the lines of what percentage of the graduating class goes on to a 4-year college, what mean test scores might be, what the grade distribution might be over the course of the junior year. More information about the community, because all of that factors into how we make our decisions. Interviews are sometimes part of this process. At Harvard, we offer a long interview to everyone who applies. So it is a required part of the application, unless we really don't have someone who lives nearby. It's not a stress interview. It's not a way to weed you out of the applicant pool. It is not a way for us. We don't keep track, as was mentioned earlier about schools that keep track of demonstrated interest. We don't. But we do ask them to sit for an interview. It should be a conversation. It should be an opportunity for you to find out something more about the school. It should be an opportunity for that alum to find out something more about you, and to be able to tell us in the admissions committee anything that we should be thinking about that might not appear on your application. For instance, that you were the oldest of 6 and that you had a job for 25 hours a week all through high school because you helped to support the family. Or that the budget cuts in the school district have made the counselor's caseload 250 students to 1, or whatever it may be. That those are factors that we consider as well. Financial aid. Get to know your financial aid office is probably the best advice I can give you. Most colleges now, all colleges now have a net price calculator on their website, so you can go online and look to see what it might cost your family. Don't stop at the price tag. As I stand here representing one of the pricier schools in the universe, I also in the next breath can tell you that my scholarship budget this year is $189 million. So, and that is all based on need, and that is all regardless of your GPA or regardless because of your number of activities you do in school is all based on financial need. Harvard has no loans for undergraduates, so you will graduate debt-free. So don't stop at the price tag just because you think that a school may be out of your family's reach. Get to know it because you may be pleasantly surprised. All right, let me talk for 2 seconds about the committee process, because that's what you all want to hear about, want to know about anyway. How do we really make all of these decisions when we get 40,000 applications in a given year? How do we sort it down to a freshman class of 1,650? Well, for most of us here, it's more of an art than a science. We start with the notion of the whole person. We're not just looking at you as a collection of numbers or a collection of credentials, but we are using all of these elements of your application, the essay, the interview, the teacher reports, the transcript, to try and get a picture of you, because we're all trying to create communities. We're trying to create communities of students who are going to be engaged in the learning process, who are going to get something from our environment, and who are going to be able to give back to it in some way. And by give back to it, I don't mean with your checkbook, I mean by, in terms of we're looking for scholars, we're looking for artists, we're looking for musicians, we're looking for athletes, we're looking for politicians, we're looking for anything you can possibly name. We are looking for diversity in all forms, and we want to create communities. My job would be really easy, all of our jobs would be really easy if we just said, okay, perfect GPA, check, perfect test scores, check, okay, we're done, we can go home now. It wouldn't work at Harvard because we have more students who apply who have those credentials than we have spaces in the freshman class. But it would really mean that it would be a very different place. If you've been to Harvard Square and you've gotten out of the subway and you realize that these are hair colors that are not found in nature that you're seeing, and it's not, you're not in Hanson anymore when you come into Harvard Square. And that's part of the charm. That's part of the experience, is that we're hoping that students will learn from each other as much as they learn from their professors, as much as they learn from the incredible resources that you have as a college student at any college. Colleges are all in the business of creating communities and creating groups of students who are going to give and take and learn from each other at 1 o'clock in the morning, or over in the dining hall, or in the locker room, or wherever, in the practice hall, wherever it may be. So what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that we're looking at you as a person. I don't care, I don't count up the number of applications that I receive in any given year from Whitman-Hanson High School and say, all right, got 7 applicants and we've got room for 1. That's not how it works. We don't stack your transcripts up against each other. We don't put your teacher reports next to each other and see which teacher said nicer things about each one of you. You're competing against yourself in this process. That's sometimes hard for students to understand or to read, I guess, but you really are competing against yourself in this process. We're looking at what you have done with the opportunities that you have had. We are not asking ourselves, what would you have done had you gone to Phillips Academy, Andover? We are not asking ourselves, what would you have done if you weren't working 25 hours a week to support your family? We're looking at what you have done with the challenges and the opportunities that you have faced. And so we're looking at you as that whole person. We're looking for the fit. We talked a little bit about fit earlier. We're looking for students who are going to fit our community, and you should be thinking about that too when you go to visit colleges, is, can I see myself here for the next 4 years? Can I see myself as part of this community? Do these people sound like people that I want to spend time with? We have no quotas. People sometimes think that we have boxes that we check and we can fit into one box or another, whatever that may be. At Harvard, you all apply to the college, no matter what your major. We don't admit to majors. You make that decision at Harvard a little later than most. In the middle of your sophomore year, you declare a major. So, but we don't start out thinking we need a certain number of engineers or a certain number of people from this background or a certain number of people from this state or wherever it may be. We're looking at you. It's sort of a time-consuming process. It takes us a long time, even though it may not sound like it from some of the sort of flipped things I said. We do take it very seriously. We read every word that you write. We expect and hope that you'll be in touch with us throughout this process. If there are things that you think don't really capture you, We encourage you to be in touch with us. We as admissions officers are your advocates in this process. We're not your enemies. We're on your side, and it's our job to represent you to the best of our ability to the rest of the admissions committee, who, in my case at least, will deal with a series of votes. We will read all of the applications. We will convene as an admissions committee. We will start narrowly. We will broaden it out. We will go through rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds. It's very open. It's very transparent. Everybody gets a vote. Your application gets put up on the overhead. I'm dating myself again, so that we can all read your essay as we go around the room. But that's to your benefit too, so that we can look and get to know you as a person in this process, and advocate for you to the best of our ability. So lastly, I just want to echo something that Ruth said earlier, is that there really is a college out there that's for everybody. I myself was on the 9-year, 3-college plan, and so I can personally attest that sometimes it takes a little while to find that right fit. My daughters went to wildly different institutions, and they both had wonderful college experiences at places, especially for my oldest. I thought, there is no way that this is going to work, and she had a fabulous time. And it was all because she visited in her junior year and fell in love with this campus. So there really is a place out there for everybody. We'll make it work. Step back, keep it in perspective, and good luck.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions that you'd like to ask? I'm happy to open up to questions for a few minutes. Yes. That's a great question. Yes, the school does help the kids with essays. We have something we call the College Essay Project for seniors. In the first couple weeks of school, we invite Heidi Erickson from Quinnipiac University to come down. She spends a day. She meets with all of the senior English classes and does a college essay workshop for them. Then the kids continue to work on their essays with their English teachers, and the essays are due to me usually by October 1st. Teachers get them from the students, and then they get them to us. And then we actually send them out to a variety of different schools for feedback. So, and then we will invite those college admissions people to come back and actually visit the school to give feedback to our students. So for instance, Kelly for years has worked with us for our AP students. And usually our reps do 2 classes. Corey has done it for us as well. So we have had Sacred Heart University, Carter College helps a lot. Rhode Island College has been here the past couple of years. Sorry, I'm moving back because I always forget. Salary Regina has helped in the past. So we basically work with about 6 or 7 different schools. They all agree to read 2 classes of essays for us, and they read them. They provide feedback and come back to the seniors before the November 1st early election deadlines and give that feedback ahead of time. So yeah, we help a lot with the essays. It's a lot of work, and I don't think the kids appreciate the option or the opportunity that they're really getting sometimes, but it's great to get that feedback before it's really real. No, it's not in the junior year. We do it in the senior year, the very start of the senior year. Any other questions at all? Yes.
I have a question. That track we had going to Massasoit.
Yeah.
Am I allowed?
Yeah, but that's good. You don't have to repeat your question. So that's
All right. Now, when you do that 2 years at the Massasoit, for instance, you can only apply that to a state school. It's not like a private school it can be applied to, correct?
I'll let Paula answer that. In general, the specific mass transfer and articulated programs are often for the state schools. But I'm sure that many Massasoit students will transfer on to private universities and be very well to transfer credit as well.
That is correct. So, at Massasoit, if you're in technical difficulties.
Can you hear it?
So at Massasoit, we do have the mass transfer program that I mentioned earlier, and what I did fail to mention is that we participate with all the UMasses and the state schools, so you can basically transfer right from Massasoit to one of those schools. The students go all over the place, so if they want to go somewhere else, they definitely can transfer those credits into the school of their choice. It just depends on the school sometimes. sometimes they may not get into the major that they're interested in, so it really depends on the courses they take at Massasoit, what classes will transfer in there. And especially with the private schools, they're kind of different where they can pick and choose what classes will transfer in. But yes, they do go not just to the state schools or the UMasses, they can go anywhere else.
And typically, credits will transfer if they're C or higher, typically. Would you
Yes.
agree with that?
Yeah.
Do the tuition benefits just get the state schools?
Yes.
Sorry?
Yeah.
The tuition benefits?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just state
Yeah.
schools. Yes.
Do they help them, is there like a list of like scholarships that they can apply? How they would, the process of applying for scholarships?
So the question if you didn't hear was about scholarships. We actually have two scholarship programs here at Whitman-Hanson. First is Dollars for Scholars. Do we have any DFS parents here? If you, your child should really join DFS, Dollars for Scholars, if they participate in activities and fundraising. When it comes time for scholarships, they tend to do very, very well. A lot of the students will get DFS scholarships, but those that actually participate in fundraising seem to do very well. So DFS is Dollars for Scholars. It's a community organization. Students fill out one scholarship application. This is in senior year, usually in March. And they're applying for all of the scholarship money that DFS has. And students are eligible provided they have 2.5 GPA. The other scholarship program is the local and community scholarships. And our office organizes it, but we don't choose the winners. So for instance, there might be the Lions Club or the JCs or Whitman Youth Football. And we will post all of those scholarships on our website. We'll send them out, we'll collect the applications, and then those individual committees come in and get them and make the decisions. We have a scholarship assembly for seniors every year. It's usually the first week of March, where we invite them all to come in. We actually make all the whole senior class come and hear the information about the scholarships. We invite the DFS folks to come as well, and all of the students get that information. And we send postcards home to parents to alert them that the scholarship season is open and what to do. So every year, I would say we give out, it's the Wednesday before graduation right in this room, and it's usually at least several $100,000 in scholarship money for local DFS and local and community.
So when is a good time to start applying for scholarships?
Usually not until senior year, this
Okay.
is like March of senior year. There are lots of scholarship websites out there, FastWeb, all different types of things that you can find online. Typically, I think in my career, most of the scholarship money that students get comes through those local and community or Dollars for Scholars, or organizations where parents might work, community groups that you might belong to. That's really, in my experience, where most of the scholarship money comes. But again, there are some very reputable scholarship search engines, in fact, they're in that book. You can take a look at those and start to play with them a little bit, put the information in and see what comes up. Any other questions? That question was, do we have a tattoo program for the Naviance password? No, we don't usually tattoo those things, but we are happy to reset them anytime. All you need to do is email your school counselor and we can reset it for you. Actually, the parents can have your own account if you'd like, or you can use your student's account. On March 21st, we will have that Naviance night. We'll invite junior and sophomore parents to come to that, and we'll actually show you how to do it, set you up with accounts, and do all that as well. Anything else before we go? One thing I want to ask you is, in your packet there is a blue piece of paper, which is the evaluation. If you have to take a minute to fill it out, we really appreciate it. And if you can pass it on your way out. We also have some information out of the back from Massasoit if you're just going to take a brochure. But thank you so much for coming. And please feel free to get in touch with us anytime if you need any help. So let's give a round of applause one more time for our